you've been through a lot. I know some of the stories. You faced challenges. You've had to walk families through heartache. What helps people make it in youth ministry?
Oh, boy.
Hey, welcome, friends. We are so pumped for episode 2 in season 2 of the Church Chat podcast. I don't know if you ever heard of Church Chat podcast before, but this is a podcast where we have conversations about ministry that you wish you were having or you wish you had before you got into this mess that can be ministry. Real conversations, real people doing real work, and we don't hold anything back. I'm so excited to be here. I'm one of your hosts, Josh Ott.
And I'm Emily, and today's guest likes to take cold showers, is a reader, blogger, podcaster, and he's been a youth pastor for decades. Steve Anderson, we are so excited to have you on the show.
Oh, man. I'm very humbled and honored to be here, guys.
And
cold showers. And I did take a cold shower this morning, by the way.
Crazy.
You're a maniac. Is that some sort of like training for youth ministry? Is that like did that start at like some camp somewhere?
I don't know. Someone recommended it to me. I started trying it, and it's actually, once you get through like the first week, it's pretty good. I enjoy it.
So you actually enjoy it?
I enjoy the after effects, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Through gritted teeth, I enjoy it.
Also, phenomenal golfer, Emily.
Really?
He tears it up.
I did not find that in my Instagram stalking.
Yeah, tears it up is accurate.
Yeah, you won him in your foursome if you're playing a scramble.
Not true. I'm actually going after this interview today. So
see, yeah,
it's a nice day of the week. Yeah,
that's exactly what good golfers say. I'm going after, right after this, I got one lined up.
Which I didn't even understand anything. I didn't know that scramble and foursome could be applied to golf. So
what
I learned
did you?
new things.
Now wait a minute.
No, don't ask that.
What did you think it was applied to?
I was thinking Foursquare, and then I don't know. Scramble is eggs to me. So
eggs and youth group games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, not that golf.
Four people play at a time in a group. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a blast. I miss playing golf. I can't play golf anymore, but just due to some injuries. But man, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, okay. Now, do you like to watch golf as well? Like, is that interesting to you?
I don't watch a lot of golf.
Okay.
It's become more. I only took it up about 6 or 7 years ago, so I do watch it occasionally now because it's more interesting to me than it used to be.
Sure.
But I wouldn't like plan my day around watching golf. No.
Yeah. Okay.
I plan my naps.
There you go.
Find
for
it very
watching golf.
Boring.
It's like cathartic.
It's quite relaxing. Yeah, it can be exciting.
Mm-hmm.
You got to like golf. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I like miniature golf.
That's not.
No, it's not golf. I know, which is sad.
No, that's on ESPN 75, I believe. Right after cornhole and whatever else.
Bocce ball. We just had somebody on who is a bocce ball person. So
okay.
It is so cool to hang out with you. I've known Steve Anderson, the original OG youth ministry Sherpa.
Mm-hmm.
You and your friend Matt, the OGs, for a long time, and I've got to partner with him in ministry. And you have just been so faithful and incredible. You'll hate this, but you're really good at what you do, and you've been really good at what you do for such a long time in youth ministry, which is a kind way of saying you're old. You're not.
That is true. That is true.
So I'm just really
ages
excited.
You for sure.
I'm pretty sure we tried to get Steve on season 1, and he ghosted
turned us
us
down.
Did I?
Probably.
I don't remember. There's been such great guests on this show. Honestly, I mean, Derek Hodney. I don't know anyone who was more made to do what he does than Derek Hodney.
Yeah,
he's so good at it. Ryan Bailey, our worship leader here, is so talented, and then Tony Hunt, as well.
Those are powerful.
They are very powerful
from season 1.
Can I tell you guys a little story about Tony Hunt?
Yeah,
please.
Sure.
I think you'll enjoy this. So back in the day, like 1990 or so, I went to work for Hershey Evangelical Free Church. I was a communications director. And that's where I first got my start in youth ministry, volunteering with Mike Wagner was the youth pastor there. And I was volunteering with junior high guys. And in those years, those formative years, early 90s, I like realized, I think this is what I'm supposed to do with my life. And so in 1994, the church was hiring a couple positions in youth ministry. Mike was stepping into a different role. I forget exactly what the arrangement was, but so I applied for the junior high job at that time, 1994. I was so excited. I thought I was going to get it. Had my heart set on it. I'm 27, 28 years old, something like that. And comes down to, after 6 months of waiting and interviews and stuff, comes down to two people. It's me and Tony Hunt.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Tony was from Kansas, and he had applied for the job. And so we go to these interviews, and then they come back and they tell me, "We're sorry, we hired the other guy. We hired Tony."
Oh,
and
gosh.
I was devastated. I was devastated because I was so involved in the group, and he was somebody we didn't know, and he was younger than me, and
wow.
so I was pretty bitter. I was embittered. The reason that I was given was that I didn't have any biblical education. I had an undergrad in communications. And so I was like, well, I'll show them. And so that led me to like pursue seminary, and eventually led us to Denver, Colorado, to go to Denver Seminary and all of that to really push me. Like, I was intent on doing youth ministry. And so I pursued that path. And Tony was great. Like, we kind of got along. He knew. And we wrestled that out. It's fine. But I had to step out. I couldn't volunteer for him. I just emotionally couldn't do it. So anyway, fast forward to 2000. This is where it gets really funny. 2000, I'm graduating from seminary, and I'm looking for a position. It's spring of 2000. I'm about to graduate with a degree in youth and family ministry. And I had desires to come back to the East because our families are out here. So I had 4 interviews in consecutive weekends with 4 different churches in the East. One was outside DC. One was here where I am now in Frederick. One was in Ithaca, New York. And the 4th one was with West Shore Free Church. Okay. Phil Thorne was the senior pastor. Is it John Nesbitt was the executive pastor, I think.
Good old
So
Johnny.
that was 4 consecutive weekends. I flew to the East Coast and did in-person interviews. The 4th weekend was the West Shore weekend. And my wife had already been on 3, so she didn't come on this one. And I was exhausted, and I got there and I went through the interview. I taught Sunday school or something, went out to lunch with the leadership, and I went home. I mean, it was a big church, much bigger than the other ones, lots of leadership demands and stuff. And so I went home, and that week I got the flu and I was dead to the world. But I had enough energy to email the church and say, "Hey, thanks for having me. If there's anything else you need from me, let me know." And the instant response was, "Hey, thanks for coming out, but based on your teaching and our interview with you, we're not going to hire you."
Oh my
No way.
gosh.
Yeah. So I'm like, oh, okay. That's all right. I didn't really want to go there anyway. And I think I kind of knew I was coming here. So about 3 months later, we're moving back east, and I called up Mike Wagner to reconnect with him. And he goes, "Well, guess who they hired at West Shore? Tony Hunt."
No.
And I'm like, "What? Tony Hunt got me again?"
That is wow. Have you talked to him about it?
So I think this is what happened. This is either in my memory as
Oh my gosh.
either I've dreamed this and made it up, or this actually happened. I think I called Tony and I said, "Hey, Tony, this is how it's going to go. I'm going to die, and I'm going to be at the gates of heaven, and St. Peter's going to be there. And he's going to be like, 'I'm sorry, we're out of space. You just let the last person in.'" And it was Tony Hunt.
Oh, that's good.
Isn't that
is
wild?
Really good.
So not only do I have Tony Hunt to thank for my amazing position here in Frederick at Mountain View, but I also have Tony. He has me to thank for bringing him east, because if I'd been a better candidate, he never would have moved to Pennsylvania, and he wouldn't be the senior pastor at Lancaster Free Church. So
That's right.
he owes
man.
me. He owes me a lot more than he realizes he does.
Yeah, that's
At
some
least
good
a
beef.
lunch.
Isn't that a wild story?
That
It's
is
really
it's,
cool.
Everybody's so interconnected in EFCA
Yeah.
East. It's wild.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Well, we're super excited to jump in, get to know you better with Two Truths and a Lie. I'm sure you're familiar with that, being
Yep.
youth ministry. So hopefully you can stump me. I have not been stumped in a while.
Okay. But you were checking out my social media.
She
account,
I
so-
was.
Completely cheats.
All right.
I do. I 100% cheat.
Every
but that's-
time she cheats.
Well, I've used these on my podcast before, so hopefully you didn't listen to that particular
Okay.
episode. Okay.
I've listened to all of them. I'm
Oh
good.
gosh.
Shoot.
Okay. All right. First one. Taylor Swift came in number 2 on my most recent Spotify annual wrap up. Second, while leading a mission trip to Ecuador, I got separated from my team that I was leading for 12 hours. I got lost and couldn't find my way back to them. And number 3, when I was 12 years old, I hit 2 grand slams in one Little League baseball game.
There's so many layers there.
There's some thoughts. This is we're complex. This is not your normal
Yeah.
youth group.
No,
game.
see, yeah, this is,
No.
you can tell this is a professional.
we
Yeah.
over.
He's-
we
I
overthink
went
it too.
old, new, and somewhere in between. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know you like your lists. You love your end of the year lists, your end of the year book lists.
Which,
This
which
is
I love.
read. Your end of so it's not hard. Spotify or Apple Music? What do you?
Spotify.
Spotify. Just a little hesitation
And
right there.
you have a musical family, so I feel like your tastes are probably wide and deep. So it's not weird that Taylor Swift might show up there.
Okay.
I could see him. I could see him dancing to a little,
Shake it off.
yeah, or something. I don't know. Whew.
But see, like, this is the hard thing with this game. There's so many like little nuances.
Yeah, like
I
Ecuador,
could see
12
maybe Taylor
hours.
Swift being number 3 or number 5, but
Like,
just
do
not
they-
number 2.
Do they not have cell reception or Google Maps in Ecuador? Like that one's I'm a little suspect of that one, just because. Like, how long ago was it though? Steve's been doing youth ministry for a
long
while,
time. Mhm.
so maybe it was late '90s, early 2000s, and he's just egging us on with these
I know.
Well, you get it.
And also, there's
Gotta
this
make a
whole
choice.
thing, like where like a lot of dudes come on here and they throw a sports one in there, and I feel like it's always amplified. I'm gonna go. The lie is I'm gonna go lie, and I'm gonna go why I think it's a lie. I think that the 2 grand slams is a lie, and it's not because I don't think you can hit. It's because I think you probably only hit 1 grand slam in a Little League game. So that's what I'm going. What are you going with, Emily?
Okay.
Stumped. I've never seen her
I know.
this
Well,
locked
part
up
of me
on one.
wants to resist doing this, picking the same thing as you, so that we can diversify. I don't feel good about this choice, but I am going to go with Taylor Swift being number 2.
That's a lie, you think?
I think. I mean, in my heart of hearts, I don't think so, but we're just going to go with it anyways.
Final answers.
Yep.
Yes.
You're both wrong.
Oh, man.
You're both wrong. Taylor Swift did come in number 2 on
Number
my
2.
Spotify annual review. And yes, Josh, when I was 12, I did hit 2 grand slams. It's the greatest day in a kid's life.
I am impressed.
Grand slams in one game. I
That
made
is-
Tommy Moomaw cry. He was the pitcher.
That is a good day.
That is
Sorry,
amazing.
sorry, Tommy.
Sorry, Tommy, wherever you are. But yes, I've never actually lost my own group on a mission trip. So that's why I'm
Yeah.
still employed. as
We
a
sh-
pastor.
we should have thought that second one through.
I know. Yep.
But I do take this consolation. I like to feel that my early choice of the Grand Slams and my reasoning threw Emily off enough that she
Yeah.
also picked right.
Yep.
Okay.
Second guessed my
That's
better
fair.
judgment.
So
Okay.
if I'm going to
fair.
lose, I want everybody to lose.
That's fair.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to jump into it. We have lots to talk about: podcasting, just your longevity in ministry, family life. So why don't we start with podcasting? Like
Sure.
Josh already said, you are kind of the OG podcaster. And I'm not going to lie, it's kind of intimidating to be on a podcast with you. It feels
Oh,
like,
wow.
like Josh and I do this kind of in our basement. Not really in our basement, but like respectively.
minute.
It's not a professional thing. I mean, we do have nice mics, but But like you do a thing, you know.
I'm
like
not feeling good about myself right now,
Wow.
Emily.
You founded Youth Ministry Sherpas, and now you do it with some big time people, and that's super exciting. So tell us how that started.
Your mics are so much nicer.
No, you have a
and
dangly one. That's so
I
cool.
know. I mean, I bought this thing for like $15 on Amazon.
Yeah, our mics
Yeah,
are a lot nicer.
It's funny. It's funny how impressive you think we are, because we are so not impressive. And we literally started it out of our basement too. So, yeah, podcasting is interesting. I actually feel like I started podcasting when I was like 8 years old, because I've always just loved like radio and broadcasting stuff. And when I was really little, my cousin and I did this fake radio station. We would record these radio shows on a tape recorder. The station was called WIG, Wig 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 Wiggy. And we did two things on the show. We did all Elton John music, nothing but Elton John, mostly from the old stuff like Yellow Brick Road. And then we did fights in the studio where we would take out a bunch of pots and pans and we'd smack them around and say, the fight's broken out in the studio. And my grandma would have to come down and tell us to stop. So like, there's always been this like joy of making stuff. And so, you know, I was a communications major, thought I might be a sports broadcaster or something like that. So then youth ministry world, you know, and that was my calling, which I figured out in my 20s. And about 10 years ago, part of like our local youth leader network that I kind of helped lead and coordinate, a bunch of local guys, we would hang out all the time, and we would travel once or twice a year together to a conference or something. And then we would sit around at night and tell stories about parent fails, stupid things we said from stage, you know, kids we lost on mission trips, whatever it is. And we would laugh, and it would feel so good to be together. And I started to think, you know, these are stories that other people would maybe benefit from. Youth pastors would love just hearing that conversation and feeling like they're part of it. So I decided to invite one of them, my good friend Matthew, who is a youth pastor just down the next county at a church like ours. And I said, hey, if you'll do this, I'll make you a star. All you got to do is show up, you know? So I kind of created the whole thing, came up with the Sherpa name because Sherpas are cool. They're like the guides in the mountains who lead people to find the trail and not get lost. And they have the experience to help others. So came up with that, and that was cool. And we just started the show in 2017. Just the two of us, actually, right next door in the church auditorium. Started pushing it, like Instagram, following everybody we could to try to get followers, and just worked really hard to make it work. And we met every week, and we put out episodes every week. And we were constant and consistent and diligent. And then eventually started to meet some different people. We went out to the National Youth Workers Convention a couple of times. We did a Kickstarter, raised a little bit of money. We went out and got an exhibitor's booth just to meet people.
Yeah.
And then we kind of met all the good guys out at Download Youth Ministry, Josh Griffin and Doug Fields, and we kind of got in with them. We went to one of their conferences and rented a house where we invited other youth workers to stay with us. And that all just led to like getting to know people. And then we started interviewing like legends in youth ministry world, which is pretty niche. you know, famous youth pastors are not really very famous, but they're famous to us. And so people like Walt Mueller and Duffy Robbins and Greg Steer and Josh Griffin and Katie Edwards and the Skit guys, like just really, really fun people to talk to, got their stories in youth ministry, and just loved it. It was just been a great creative endeavor. So then COVID kind of killed it, and Matthew got out of student ministry after 30 years. And I felt like I wasn't finished. And I wanted to still do it. And so I found a friend of mine named Brock Morgan. He's used to be here in the East Coast. He's now out in California. Asked him if he'd be willing to do it with me. He said yes. And then we agreed, let's find a woman to join us. And so we found this really amazing youth pastor named Shannon Dunn from California. She lives in Malibu, of all places. And it's like, let's rebrand it. Where I'm in Maryland, you're in California. We'll call it Youth Ministry Sherpas Coast to Coast. And we'll relaunch. And we did that last fall. We're 15 episodes in, still kind of finding our way. It's very small, so it's not as impressive as it sounds, but we're doing the best we can. So,
but
it's been a lot of fun.
it's very valuable too. I mean, if you're out there and you're in youth
Yeah.
ministry, whether you're a volunteer, a parent just trying to pull the pieces of a youth group together in your church, or you've been coming out of college or seminary getting into youth ministry, or you've been doing it a while, like it is solid and good, helpful, valuable stuff for anybody. And we'll drop a link somewhere in the show notes for that. My hope is that some of our audience that is involved in youth ministry will jump on and maybe subscribe to your podcast.
Our tagline was helping youth workers to keep going. That was the original tagline. And so the idea was, if we can help a generation of younger youth pastors to hang in there through some tough times and stick it out, the joy on the other side of that and the fruit on the other side of that is really significant. And so hopefully we were able to do that with some people other than our friends locally who listen to us. So yeah,
I love
that was
it.
the goal.
One thing I always associate with you, obviously, is Youth Sherpas, but my husband, Tim, was a youth pastor at Faith Church, and he wrote for us a couple of times on the blog. And one of the blogs he wrote was 5 podcasts every youth minister should listen to. And that was before we knew about Youth Sherpas. And it still gets so many hits, but he didn't include you guys. I don't think he knew about you guys. And then I think about that every single time. It's like, we did not even include one of our EFCA East own with this thing that keeps. So I'm going to have to get him to edit it. So I just feel shame every single time I
am
see that.
So bitter.
I know you
My
are.
goodness.
He looks
I
so
think you think about it
disappointed.
every day. I know. So
We're going to rectify that now. Everybody
no, I know.
listen,
I'll have to do it like editor's note.
hit
My husband's
pause.
a weirdo.
Hit pause
Yeah.
right now on your iPhone and go to your podcast of preference platform and type in Youth Ministry Sherpas and you'll be
Yep.
good to go.
Yeah. There's
It is really
over,
cool.
we did over 200 episodes in the original show.
That's
What
so
have you
cool.
learned during the process? Is there any like aha moments, maybe adjacent to the podcast that happened because of it?
I think it's made me a better youth pastor. I think one of the things that I felt a little guilty about was like, is this taking me away from my day job and my service to my local church? But I think in the end, what it did was expanded the conversations that I was having around student ministry and the size of the world that I was engaged in a really helpful, productive way. And so I have so many more contacts around the country and have had great conversations with youth pastors in different contexts and just feel like I'm infinitely a better person and youth pastor because of those conversations and just being the one who kind of facilitated some of that. So
I love that. Sometimes in ministry can be such an isolating thing if you're not intentional about building those connections and like really kind of investing and put yourself out there, investing in relationships with other colleagues and people that are going through the same thing. It can be terribly isolating. I know I spent a period of my ministry isolated, and man, I don't know how I did it now when I look back. Those conversations and relationships add so much to our health and to our understanding of people and to how we minister. So that's pretty awesome.
it's definitely true. I always tell people I wouldn't still be in student ministry if I didn't have these friendships and these contacts outside of my own little world. I just needed a place to talk, and you can only find that like outside your church. You can have it inside your church, but you have to have it outside your church too.
Okay, so let's talk about that. I mean, you have been a youth pastor for decades, and that seems like you are in the vast minority of youth pastors. A lot of times it's like, so I don't want to make blanket statements, but there is a large portion of youth pastors who that's a stepping stone for them to go on to seemingly bigger and better things, and or you get burnt out. So the fact that you have stuck with it for that long is amazing. Did you go in thinking that you would be a youth pastor for this long? And what are some things that have helped you to still be doing what you're doing?
I'm probably still doing it to prove to Tony Hunt that I could do it. Yeah, to answer your first question, I did go into it thinking this is what I wanted to do. This is where my giftedness was primarily. And so I didn't actually become a youth pastor, like a paid pastor, until I was 35. And that was a 10-year process from the time I felt that call to actually, getting my first position. Lots of volunteer years in there. And then just the whole Denver experience of actually moving my family across the country to study ministry to become a youth pastor. Like I was pretty committed to it. So I never really wanted to do anything else. I was blessed because when I came here, we were a church startup and we were only 3 years old. And I was the first hire beyond Pastor Guy Kneebone. And so I had significant opportunities within the church. I preach a lot, so I get that need scratched as well. I always joke I wouldn't want to be a senior pastor because I don't want a demotion. There are things that senior pastors do that I love, like preaching and some leadership. And there are things senior pastors do I would absolutely hate and would kill my soul. I just don't have that desire. I think you said it's often a stepping stone. I think that was historically true. And I think burnout is real. I think some just run a season of faithfulness and then feel called to something else. And that's, of course, entirely appropriate as well. But yeah, to continue in youth ministry into my 50s is, I don't know, I'm kind of proud of it, I guess.
I would be super proud of it.
My goodness.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
It gets physically demanding, I'll tell you that.
One of the things that you just mentioned, like some of the turnovers burnout. It's for real. I mean, and I think over the last couple of years, we've seen more of that than we have in a long history of full-time ministry in churches. So, like, you've been through a lot. I know some of the stories. You've faced challenges. You've had to walk families through heartache. What helps people make it in youth ministry?
Oh boy. I think a few things that come to mind right away. One is friends outside of the church who understand what you do. That has definitely kept me alive. Like some dark seasons where I could hang out with some other youth pastors and we could really commiserate, vent, encourage one another. It's been huge. I think another one is just a real sense of calling. You know, because I was so committed to the calling initially, I didn't fall into youth ministry. I pursued it as a 28 or 29-year-old. And so whenever I question, should I still be doing this? God manages to take me back to that sense of calling. And, you know, whether you weather this season, you weather this storm, you know, there's another season on the other side of it. It's perspective that this isn't the thing that's going to end it for you. You can move past this. You can get through this. Yeah, there's been some hard ones for sure. Some church frustrations, you know, I'm sure you guys have experienced all the pain of the last few years in churches and, you know, student issues, challenges. We've had everything from suicide to teen pregnancy to just apathetic people to parents who expect you to be more than you can be. Lots of things like that.
I guess a question I have rolling around, kind of formulating in my head is, you've been doing a long time. You've been in one place doing a long time. There's got to be benefits from that. There has to be things that people miss out on seeing as fruit of ministry. And part of that, I guess this question comes from, you know, there's people that just leave one church to the next new exciting thing and the next new exciting thing. You kind of bounce around. So what are some of the benefits of like sticking it out and staying in one place and doing ministry?
Some of it is my temperament. I think I'm just a person who likes stability. You know, I grew up in a small town with stable parents in a stable home. I have friends. I literally have a friend from like preschool. So I do like stability. But the fruit of it is, there's so much. One is I have a lot of youth leaders who are former students. That's cool. A huge blessing. Kids who come back and want to serve, want to be involved. So there's that. In fact, one of my staff, my girls director, Leah Noble, I've known her since she was, you know, sixth grader. She grew up in our ministry and has come back to serve, and she's just a champion. I just love her. There's I think the trust of the senior pastor. You know, we're kind of the OGs here, so I think he trusts me, and I'm a safe place for him. So. And then just like the generational impact on families, where I have a number of students who right now I've actually kids in high school whose parents were in my youth group. So that's crazy. That's I had a kid come in a couple weeks ago, just at middle school, on a Wednesday night, and this girl walks in, and I'm standing at the table where they fill out the visitor card. She fills it out and hands it to me, and I look at her mother's name. I'm like, your mom was in my youth group. And she looks at me like, man, you are old, dude. So there's some of that too. And then I think you guys are going to ask me a little bit about culture, but I think culture, the building of culture takes time.
Yeah.
And culture over a couple generations of students becomes very deeply embedded. And I think that's maybe one of the biggest benefits of sticking around.
Well, listeners, today's podcast episode is sponsored by and supported by EFCA East. EFCA East is a district of the Evangelical Free Church of America. This is a phenomenal association of churches that exist to help develop transformational churches among all people. And they do that by helping leaders live well, lead well, and multiply. EFCA East is here to serve you, whether you're in one of our 6 states that make up EFCA East or not. And I'd encourage you to find out more about EFCA East, the amazing programs and support they offer at efcaeast.com. Listen, my church has been a part of the EFCA East for a really long time. We have benefited greatly from it. I can't imagine doing ministry over the last 10 years without being part of the EFCA East. Their support, their help, the encouragement, the time spent with colleagues throughout the district has been so beneficial, not just to me, but to my entire staff. I'd really encourage you to check out EFCA East, get involved if you're an unaffiliated church, explore what it would mean to join, maybe even consider financially supporting EFCA East. They are doing absolutely incredible things to create healthy churches and healthy leaders that transform our world. Check it out. Learn more at efcaeast.com.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out how to word this question. Because you've been in the same place in the same role for over time with students, you have a really high level view of how culture has changed for students. Are there any things that you've seen that are evergreen, that just are always the same for students? And then what are some unique challenges to our day and age, right now, that students are facing?
Yeah. There's lots of challenges. I just talked to somebody from Fuller Youth Institute, and he kind of said, yeah, there's things that are so different, but there are things that never change. And that's absolutely true. And the things that never change are students are looking for answers to their 3 primary issues, belonging, identity, and purpose. And that has never changed and will never change. Even as adults, we're looking for those things. And so Student Ministry is a place where they can kind of work those out, and we can walk with students as they work those out. That's the core of Student Ministry, is helping students figure out who they are, who they belong to, where they belong, and then what God wants to do with them in the world. That's super beautiful. I mean, the changes are obvious. When I started, there was no cell phones. We could take kids away for the weekend and their parents didn't have to talk to them. That was nice. There's no social media. I don't know how we communicated with families. I guess we mailed newsletters to their home with stamps. You guys remember stamps? Clip art that you would cut and paste on a piece of paper to copy it and all that kind of stuff. So that's all so different. Social media is just, a whole generation ticking time bomb. So there's all kinds of stuff like that that's way, way different than it used to be. But at the same time, because those 3 things still exist in the heart of every student, those 3 questions, you still pursue the same end goal. You just have to figure out how to navigate the hurdles that they're leaping over in pursuit of those 3 questions.
So how have you then remained nimble, sprightly as you try to learn these, I think that would be really challenging. I feel
that's such a great word picture. That's so funny.
Just you jumping around being like a goat. But yeah, so, having to learn as your students learn, essentially, how to manage these things wisely and how to minister in this new world.
I'm just laughing because I'm just thinking about last night when I'm setting up chairs in the youth room and how my back is killing me and I'm moving around like a 90-year-old. Nimble is not the word that comes to mind. Well, the one big thing that I have to have is my teammates are younger. And so I have a 30-year-old girls director, a 29-year-old middle school director who I'm privileged to work with. And they are the youthful relational energy that I don't always have anymore. And they're a little bit more in touch with the students. Although even they would say, I mean, they've been out of high school now for 10, 12 years. And they would say it's way, way different than when they were in high school. So yeah, just keeping up with culture as best I can and realizing that my role is not really to know everything in culture or to be relevant in all that stuff. I don't have TikTok. I swear I'll never have TikTok, but to be just a steady presence, a winsome, wise, loving dad figure is kind of how I see myself now. I just want the kids to know that I know their name. I love them. I care about them. I'm still here because I love you.
Yeah.
You haven't killed me yet. And I'm going to stick it out, even if I don't know what that word means that you just used. And you can make fun of my bald head and my lack of understanding of some influencer. That's okay. I don't care.
That's great.
So was there ever a tension for you? I mean, we do really want to talk about kind of marriage and family stuff. So I guess this might be an okay transition, but did your kids ever feel like that they were in competition with your youth group kids?
I don't think so. I think my kids all really liked youth group. I get that question a lot from younger youth workers. What's it like when I have my kid in youth group? It was really never a problem for us, other than the night that I had to actually pull my two oldest sons apart. That was the only fight I ever had to break up at youth group was my own kids. Yeah, over some girl, I forget.
Oh,
but,
no.
This is great. They occasionally got in some trouble, but other than that, they loved youth group. They had a lot of friends at church. And the thing that it did was it aligned family schedules because I was in control of the schedule. So if I wanted to plan a mission trip, I could plan it around my family vacation or my son's baseball tournament so that we could do stuff. We managed to nimbly kind of walk through those years, navigating that. And it was delightful. In fact, Josh, with your daughter getting ready to graduate, you said you're going to be okay with it. But I remember the night that my youngest son, who was our worship leader and just, awesome kid, he graduated in 2016. We were at Challenge Conference. I think it was in Kansas City. I can't remember where we were, but we were in a hotel. The conference had ended and kids are just hanging out. We're flying home the next day and Thomas has his guitar and he's sitting in a hallway, some back hallway. And all these kids are like gathered around and he's singing his Thomas songs. And I'm just like, I'm crying because this is the end, right? Like the next season of youth ministry doesn't include my kids. And that was hard. That was really, really hard. That next couple of years was probably the hardest season that I've had in student ministry. Having to figure out what it means to be a youth pastor without my own kids in it was challenging. Yeah.
So I'm sorry, Josh, I am like steamrolling with these questions. So I know this will be different for every family and everybody's kids situation, but like it stresses me out to be a pastor's family. Like my husband is now a campus pastor, so we're still very much in the ministry mode, but like, and I know Josh, you're raising kids in a pastor's family, but like, how do you do that well and also give them space to, make these decisions on their own and have it be a safe space for them to explore without feeling shame yourself or without feeling like, or communicating unnecessarily judgment and shame for their own life choices. And, I think that stresses me out. Just the thought of wanting to do it well and not feeling like I know or am equipped to know what that looks like.
Oh, that's a really good question. I think it stresses a lot of people in ministry out. I think it depends on the context to some degree because our church has never been one that's like, we're not very legalistic and there's a lot of grace for kids in general and for pastors' kids too. And the senior pastor has 7, so that makes it easier.
I didn't know that either. Wow.
Yeah.
Do things every day.
So there's, the kind of like the fishbowl effect on kids in ministry. I'm sure that they experienced it in ways that they may not even understand, but they never really expressed that was a big problem for them. And the flip side is they had all kinds of opportunities for trips and leading worship and stuff like that, which was great. So I don't think we did it perfectly. Our success rate in our kids really walking with God is not 100%, but our relationships with them are 100%.
Mm,
And I think ultimately that's what matters. God will work out what's happening in each of their lives. So,
yes,
um,
absolutely.
and then I think we had some good conversations at home about questions and doubts and things that we saw in the church, maybe that we didn't even agree with, in their presence, so that they could hear us, not necessarily being critical, but kind of talking through some things ourselves. So they understood that just because we see this thing in the church doesn't mean that my parents agree with that.
Hmm.
And so we can talk about that. I think
Yeah.
it's really important to give your kids the space to ask questions and have doubts and not feel like they have to toe the party line, because they're just going to kick the party line to the curb later if that's the case, I think.
That's very, very helpful, and I think wise. That kind of reflects a lot of what my father kind of like his kind of take on it. I grew up also a PK, and my brothers and I, we all, I think there were all times where we probably hated the church,
Yeah.
but somehow still loved Jesus.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't. Maybe not all the time. Like, I don't want to sound like, maybe not all the time, but like something hung on there, like there was just the tiniest hook maybe still had us.
Yeah.
And like, I think that's all we can really hope for, like, and one. I also have the privilege of having met your wife, Karen, and we hung out at I thought it was so cool. You had me come speak for one of your retreats, and there Karen was, just with the kids, like hanging out, spending a weekend at the fall retreat. And I've always loved that you post dating pictures in your weird blue shirt, and it's like
which one? I don't know which shirt
like
that is.
There's like a shiny blue shirt.
Funny.
Okay, that is impressive. It's an impressive one, and you have to go. I just saw
I know. I was like
posted
just
on that,
which one?
Googling furiously.
And
I'm gonna go get some blue aluminum foil and post a new one.
how do you maintain what it's ministry adds another layer of stress on a relationship.
Yeah.
And kind of like it can be like your spiritual lives get immersed with your job, and that's complex and tricky and not always helpful to either person or the relationship. So how do you how have you maintained kind of that vibrant, healthy relationship you have with Karen?
She is the best.
She is awesome.
She is just the best. And it's interesting that you saw her in the youth ministry context, because she did 2 tours of duty, call them tours of duty, through the youth ministry with from freshman to senior year with a class of girls. So she did 8 years, and it was really great. And some of those relationships still exist today, which is super sweet. But she never considered herself a youth ministry person. She did that to be with me. She did that actually coming out of a sabbatical that I had. She said, let's do this together for a season. And so she jumped in, and she was an amazing youth leader, but she doesn't define herself that way. And I honestly don't think she really defines herself as a pastor's wife. We kind of joke about that. We have like an insider's take on the whole like minister's wife thing that we don't really subscribe to. And I don't want to offend anyone who's like, that is kind of their vibe, but
No, lay it out there. I want to hear this.
Well, she didn't marry a youth pastor. She married me before I even knew what youth ministry was. Yeah. And so we love each other and we have a blast together, and that's our life. And our family is our life. And youth ministry is obviously very enmeshed with our lives, but it is not going to be the thing that defines our life and our marriage. Yeah, we talk about it, and she's super gracious with the time that it requires and giving me the nights out that I need. And she's not super possessive or gets really frustrated that we communicate about when things are coming up, so that I make sure I have cleared it with her if there's another commitment that I need to make. But our marriage it existed before, it has survived during, and it will exist after. And that's how I approach it and you can call her pastor's wife, but you know what? When we go on vacation, she's my wife.
Yeah.
And so that's how we look at it. On the practical measure, we do date night every Monday night. So we've done that now since probably for the last 12 years, maybe. Of course, the kids got older, so it got easier to do that. I realized not everybody can do that every week, but we do pretty much every week now for years. Just go out to dinner Monday night and talk. And sometimes it's significant. Sometimes it's like we're so tired we just eat and go to bed. But that's a priority.
I love that. If you did not start, like for the people who did not start their relationship with those things separated, how, like, what are some strategies that you would say, hey, maybe do that, start doing this, or maybe start thinking this way to try to pull those things apart a little bit?
I think the youth pastor or the pastor has to use some discretion in what he or she brings home to discuss, because there are things that come up and they're upsetting me internally, and I kind of sometimes I will bring those home, and I need Karen to help me talk through that, but sometimes I just don't, because she doesn't need that, and I'll find somewhere else to go to talk about that, another friend or something. So I don't want her to think poorly of people that about certain things that she may not know about. I don't want to ruin her view of someone. And so I want to protect her from that. So I would just say, not that you shouldn't share everything with your spouse, but there's things that they don't need to know. Maybe they need to know every detail.
Yeah. And I think because here's what I caught myself doing like early in ministry, especially when things would get difficult or complex. I would go home and I would just emotionally vomit all the anger, the stress, the frustration. Usually it has to do with some kind of interpersonal conflict, right? So like, I can't believe this person did that, or that person said this, and I'm an emotional guy, so it gets, when I vent, it's messy, and I would go on these like rants about the negative thing that I was experiencing, just dump it on her. We'd talk about it. Somehow she would add some help or some insight into it. And then I would go on and go back to ministry, and a lot of times resolve that issue or have a conversation with that person and come to a much better place, and then not go home and talk about that part. So it's like something that, and what I'm hearing you saying is like, it takes some wisdom and discernment to know what should you share and what should you not, when should you communicate and when should you be quiet. And if you are sharing stuff, like I just told myself, like, if I'm going to talk about this negative thing and then come to some resolution, I better share that resolution. I cannot forget to add that last piece, or I'm doing a huge disservice to my spouse, my family. So yeah, it definitely takes some wisdom.
Yeah, the worst thing you could do is embitter your wife or your husband or your kids towards the church. So we don't want to do that. So that is a fine line to walk.
What are some keys that you've had for developing a team, or also your volunteer team is absolutely incredible. So how do you get the right people, and how do you get the right people and then develop them or immerse them in your culture that you've kind of built?
Well, in Leah's case, she grew up in the culture. So she's just like an outpouring of what we already have created here. And so that was a natural thing. It's a story about how we ended up hiring her. We actually had a tragedy with my previous staff person, and Leah was hired after that. So I feel like I'm not really qualified to say, like, how do you find the great people? Because Leah was already here.
Yeah. And
she wanted the job, and she's perfect for it. And Danny grew up down the road. His dad was a pastor. He grew up in Matthew's youth group, my podcast partner. And so interned with us, and that felt like an easy find. So I don't know how to find a good staff member because I don't really have experience with that. They all kind of came from inside. But the youth leaders, I think culture attracts the right people. So over time, if you are attracting the kind of people that you're looking for, and the youth workers, it's people who are winsome, they're wise, they're spiritually healthy, they take Jesus seriously, but they don't take themselves too seriously. They're fun-loving, They're good listeners. Like those kind of people make great youth leaders. And we're always looking for them. I always have like a running list. This might be a good person to talk to. And I'm always thinking long term, like I'll talk to them this year, and maybe next year when their kid is a year older, they'll be able to serve, and just kind of keep those conversations going. And then, I mean, once we get them, they tend to stick around. So
Yeah.
probably most proud of the fact that our youth leader team, our adult volunteer team, is, I think the average tenure of all of them is like 7 years.
Wow.
So to serve 7 years as a youth leader, that's amazing. Some of them, one of them actually preceded me. He's been here like 27 years. And so I just love that. And they're diverse. We have 20, 21-year-olds, a year or two out of high school. We've got the former Frederick Youth for Christ director, who's retired in 68, maybe, and his wife, who had never done youth ministry until she served with us here every Wednesday night, working with middle school. I mean, he's like the most faithful grandpa, pastoral. You can't beat that. So
no, the kids must love him.
It's just great. We got the whole mix, from the young and cool to the old and wise, and the moms and the single guys, everything in between. It's really beautiful.
So we briefly touched on this earlier, but how have you maintained a good relationship with Guy? I mean, I think in a lot of scenarios, there's a bigger age gap. Like,
true.
You're looking at like,
that's terrible.
It's just bigger. You
We're
guys
both
are
old is what you're trying to say.
Well, no, you guys are just more contemporaries. And I would say that it would be hard to be human and not feel some sense of, okay, maybe let me back that up. It would be hard for me not to be in that scenario and feel some sort of competition or needing to prove myself, or just that there's lots of opportunities for conflict. But it sounds like you have a great relationship with Guy, and that's just so impressive. How has that evolved, and how have you maintained that in a healthy way?
Just for the record, he is 4 years older than I am.
Oh, okay. So but still, I mean, the average, I'm assuming, is much more.
I think he knows I care about his kids. I think that's important. I do care about his kids. I'm closer to some than others, but I care about his kids, and I always did. And I wanted to give them the grace to not be the senior pastor's kids, which I don't know if I always succeeded at that, but that was kind of the goal. So I think he knows that. And I try to speak well of him publicly, even if I'm frustrated privately, to be a support. The same way that I would speak of my wife, I want to support him publicly and kind of champion him. And I think he has done the same for me. He's had my back a bunch of times when I've either done something really stupid and, probably in some church could have been fired for something I did. But he's gone to bat for me then. And then just resourcing us, like when I wanted to create a position, a middle school director, he's like, yeah, we need to do that. When I wanted to hire a girls director, he's like, yeah, we need to do that. And so that just wins my heart. Like, you're helping me by providing me with the help that I need. It's interesting. We're not like bosom buddies. We don't hang out all the time. We're not best buds out golfing every Friday afternoon. We're very, very different from each other, but we do have a deep love and respect. And I think it's just from work to always honor the other guy. And I'm sure I've failed at that at times, but that's what I want to be, at least.
That's awesome. Do you have any other parting words of wisdom about just life in general? I just feel like you are a wealth of just that, of wisdom, of a lot of experience in ministry. You seemingly have just a really solid family life, and that's just something to aspire to, man. I hope for that in the future as well.
Oh, thank you. I don't always feel that way. I guess just a word maybe to youth pastors who might be listening is, well, actually, I'll say this to any church leader. Like, youth ministry to me is of primary importance in churches. I just think there's a lot of churches where it's like, well, we just got to find somebody to kind of fill the gap, to bide the time, to take care of the kids while the real work of the church gets done. I think that attitude still exists in churches. And Mountain View's never taken that approach. And I think because of that, we have reaped the benefits and the fruit of the steadfastness and the culture that we've created and really built the church. I mean, the health of our church, I would like to think, has been greatly enhanced by the health of the student ministry. Families come and they stay. We have a very healthy percentage of kids outside the church who come. Our youth ministry, because it's well resourced, is actually by average, a much larger percentage of the actual size of the church than most. And so church leaders, man, make youth ministry a priority. It's the next generation and it's changing faster than ever. And if you don't emphasize that and pour into that and make that an absolute emphasis in your church, you're going to get lost. You're going to be left behind and you're going to lose a generation of kids. And so as hard as it is, that's where the rubber meets the road. So talking to a 24-year veteran of youth ministry, and I just love youth ministry and I want churches to prioritize it like ours has so that they can see the amazing things happen over time that can happen in that situation.
It's easy to see, having spent any time with your ministry and church, it's so easy to see how impactful and beautiful that has played out at Mountain View.
Well, we end every episode by sharing one thing that we're loving right now. It can be product, an idea, anything that you want to end on.
Yeah. I've got a book, a show, and a podcast.
Oh,
how's that?
Fantastic. That is fantastic.
Okay. The book. I'll go first for the book. I read a book actually about a month ago, which super powerful. It's called How to Know a Person.
I saw
by
it
David
on your
Brooks.
Instagram. Yes.
Oh, it's so good. Every Christian should read this book. It's not written to Christians. He's a New York Times op-ed writer, but he has a quote in there. He says, "The essential moral act is the act of attention." If we all treat people around us as if the essential moral act is us giving them their attention, can you imagine the power that has in relationships? So I highly recommend that book. It's a great read. The show, much less serious, Daisy Jones and the Six. Have you guys watched Daisy Jones and the Six on Netflix?
It is so good. And I have thought about, I haven't done it yet because I'm waiting for my wife, but we're trying to find the time for me to rewatch it.
Yes.
I've been listening to a lot of Fleetwood Mac since watching.
Yes, it's so good. I read the book a few years ago, and the book was good, but the show is fantastic. And they're even singing the songs. The lead actors are singing the songs, and the songs are great. Karen and I watched it together, and we loved it. I'm recommending it to everybody. The last one is the podcast. I found this podcast about 2 months ago. It's like 7 or 8 years old. So there's 7+ seasons. It's called Heavyweight. You guys ever heard of Heavyweight? It's he's a podcaster, and his deal is he finds people who have something in their past that they either want to revisit or understand better or fix, and then he figures out how to do it. Like he'll connect the people from their past to them. Or the first episode was his own father had a falling out with his very best friend of like 50+ years, and they were both in their 80s. And he reconnected them and got them to be friends again. And
that's cool.
It's funny. It's occasionally really dumb, but it's often really poignant as well. And he's a good writer, and some of the stories are really, really cool. And like I said, there's like 7 or 8 seasons of it. And I would check that out. It's really good storytelling.
That's awesome.
That's pretty cool. What do you got, Emily?
Okay, I will share 2. One of them is dumb, and the other one is not so dumb. My dumb one is I carry like tension and anxiety in my neck. So I will often get a very stiff neck, and I am somebody who is always cold. So those 2 things I always sleep with like something around my neck. And my mom just got me it's like an electric blanket for your neck, and it velcros, and you plug it in and it'll go up to 158 degrees, and it's so I fall asleep with that. Lucky Tim, like around my neck and on, and it's so delightful. If you struggle with stiff neck at all, it's a game changer.
Does this stay on all night?
No, it has a timer.
Oh, okay.
So
okay.
I'm not just, because previously I've been electric blankets have freaked me out. I feel like they're going to burn me to a crisp in my bed. Yeah. But this I am really into. So that is delightful. And then my other one is I got invited to do this Bible study with somebody from our church whose mom leads it, and she's out of state, and it just felt like it was a good opportunity to not do that kind of thing with people from my own church, which sounds really awful. But for me, it's like, if I'm going to participate in a Bible study, I would like to be authentic. And sometimes that's very difficult to know who is a safe person to do that within my own church. So that has been really life-giving. But the most life-giving part is the introduction to Paige Brown. She lives in Nashville and is associated with West Community Church, West Community Church, maybe. That I should have figured that out before I started this ramble. She was mentored by Tim Keller and is just such an amazing Bible teacher. And it's through Daniel, of all books. We're doing the first 7 chapters, and clearly I'm a little bit of a fangirl, but I really appreciate that she does pretty much everything to have people not do what I'm doing, like being a fangirl. I think they let her teach very, like, often. Josh is laughing at me as I'm like continuing to ramble. I'm so sorry. That they live stream it every week, and then it's only available for a week. She does not, because I've like Googled her, like, ooh, what else has she taught on that I want to like input, and they don't keep it up. Like, she chooses not to have it kept up, and you just really can't find much of her content. But it is so good. I have never thought about Daniel the way I think about Daniel now. It's just fantastic. So if you ever get a chance to listen to her teach, it's fantastic. So those are my 2.
Cool.
That is very cool. And on a unspiritual note, here's and a note that gets me in has gotten me into a little bit of, not a lot of trouble, but a little bit of trouble at home lately, is something that I love, and that is frozen grapes. I have been squirreling away grapes and sticking them in my freezer because they are just this wonderful frozen texture and sweet, like healthy dessert. I've gotten
Why does
in
it
trouble.
get you in trouble?
Well, because grapes disappear from my house, and then Jen's like, "Where's the grapes?" And they're frozen in the freezer, which is a problem if you just wanted regular grapes, and now you're biting into a hard and icy cold one. It's not the same. But I love them.
The question is, do you like red grapes or green grapes?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, and I wasn't. I'm not. So like in the regular grape world, I'm not a green grape guy at all. Like I don't want anything to do with green, regular, warm grapes the way God made them to be. But if you put them in a freezer, I will eat all the green grapes. I love it.
Well, there you have it.
With that, man.
Wow.
Yeah, that's epic. Anybody gonna go throw grapes in a freezer today? No, you guys, I didn't convince you.
I've had frozen grapes. Yeah, they're good. I like not patterned, but yeah.
All right. So, man, Steve, thanks so much for being here, my friend. I took a lot of notes, and I hope that our listeners did too. And in fact, that little bit where you talked about what kind of leaders' characteristics, like I got to clip that out. We got everybody needs to hear that little take on leaders. But man, just like how to make sure you have friends outside of your church circle. Your family was there before, during, and after. Like, so don't sacrifice them on the altar of ministry, which is something I feel like we could say over and over and over again as a reminder. Culture attracts the right people. Work to honor the other guys you're doing ministry alongside. Just a wealth of wisdom. And I know this has been super enjoyable for me. We could probably go on asking you questions all day, but you have to golf. And,
I do.
And I got stuff to do too. So we don't have a fancy way of saying this. We're just going to say, hey, listeners, see you next time. Bye. The Church Chat podcast is for educational purposes only. We dive deep into important and sometimes sensitive conversations and topics about life and ministry. Please know that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely the views and the opinions of the guests and the hosts, and do not necessarily represent the organizations that we work for. Nor should our views or opinions be considered a full perspective of circumstances that may be mentioned in this podcast. Our perspectives are limited, and so will be this podcast. What we hope to do is have conversations and spark greater conversations that will lead leaders and their organizations towards greater health. The Church Chat podcast is edited by Emily Gardner and produced by Emily Gardner and Josh Ott. The Church Chat podcast is supported by EFCA East, an Eastern District of the Evangelical Free Church of America, covering 6 states. EFCA East helps leaders live well, lead well, and multiply, helping churches find new vitality and multiply transformational churches on the East Coast. The EFCA is multiplying transformational churches among all people. For more information, visit efcaeast.com. We hope you enjoyed this podcast and can't wait to see you on the next Church Chat episode.